This is fresh and brand new. So we just need to get, yeah, if you could help me out, Greg, that'd be awesome. I'll start the timer. Yeah, but seriously, that financial literacy course to high school students was incredible. It's knowledge that I discovered on my own and just had to learn, and something that not everybody's taught. And I even went into youth shelters and taught something similar to them, but had to completely gear it to what their reality was. So when they're looking at a budget, you know, money in could come from, honestly, sex services that are provided, money out. They have to really track, like, what are you going to spend on drugs or other such purchases? Because that's the reality. And you may shake your head and say, like, why would you do that? But still, no matter what, that's the reality in terms of where their income is coming from and what they're spending their money on. And for them to be able to track the two of them and finish that month in a surplus is really the ticket to getting them out of that cycle. So it was really interesting. Anyway, that's a bit of a segue. Think we got it? So thank you for having me again to speak. I hope you're not getting sick of me. I promise that I won't talk again for another 6 months. All right. I did a slide deck because I like visuals. So I hope that everybody's okay with that. But this representation is basically what we think your career is supposed to look like. Right? It's almost a linear line. It's laddered. You're moving up in an upward trajectory. This is more like what my career path looked like. I don't know if anybody else can identify with that, but a little bit more of a squiggly line. So to take you back in terms of where I come from a military family. My father was a member of the Lord Strathcona's Horse. He was a tank instructor and driver. And I was born in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So that's the picture over on the far left. I spent my early childhood in Calgary, Alberta, which is where the next big conference is going to be. You can see the Saddle Dome right there. And then I finished my father finished his career in Kingston, Ontario, and that's where I spent the majority of my childhood, and also went to school, as Raj filled you in. The reason why I bring this up in terms of classification and talking a little bit more about where this came from, I want to take you way back. So when we moved to Kingston, I was, how old was I at the time? 7, 8? I have to remember now. When the military moves you for work, they give you a week to decide where you're going to live. My dad flew out to Kingston, looked for houses. He decided that he didn't want his family to live on the PMQs this time, which is the military housing, the row houses, and wanted a home. So he bought an affordable home in an area that was affordable for us in Kingston. And then the whole family drove across the country. My sister had chicken pox on the journey. It was really exciting. So what you might expect is actually the area that we ended up living in is what's referred to as the Heights. For those of you who may or may not be familiar with Kingston, that's kind of that's the low economic area of the city. That's where the crime rate is the highest. But a lot of military personnel lived there. That was before the East End was built up. So it was a real mix of things that was going on there. It was an interesting time. So I was in a school with a lot of interesting occurrences. I can remember the school getting locked down multiple times to bomb threats. I can remember the police locking us into the school because they were after perpetrators in the area, violent perpetrators with guns and firearms. So we had to get stuck in the school. But to a child, you're like, this is just reality. This is the way we are. At night, my home backed onto the playground of the school, and I could watch out my window as trucks drove around and did donuts and just destroyed the playgrounds. This wasn't a one-off thing. This was all the time. So I could watch those lights leave and then watch the police follow. Again, I didn't think anything of it. This was just reality. So what I want to talk to you about is the influence that external people can have on people's lives. And my first great influence was Mr. Brackenberry at Rideau Heights Public School. He was incredible. I think we all have stories of teachers and educators that have made an impact in our lives. Mr. Brackenberry is my number one for influence. He was the choir director. He played the guitar, honestly looked like a hippie, long hair, ponytail, glasses, played the guitar, had us all singing the Beatles. So we would go to various churches singing Imagine. It was very beautiful. And he took a special interest in me, could tell that I did well academically. I was artistically inclined. So when the Limestone Education Board opened up a new program on the west end of town, Limestone Education through the Arts program, it was a new pilot program where students had to audition, meet a certain academic grade, and they would all be pooled together to learn artistic pursuits as well as education together in a stream. He encouraged that I apply for it. And I got into that school. It got me out of Rideau Heights and got me across town. I was the only one on my bus that went to that school. I went from, the kind of peers that you would imagine to the children of doctors, lawyers, educators. My best friend, I kid you not, her parents these were their professions. Mother was a fashion model, father was a pilot. So that was my first introduction into economic disparity and just the differences in terms of what you're given, what you're starting out with in life. But Mr. Brackenberry was a great introduction into that school, which eventually led me to Queen's University. And believe it or not, you'd think in terms of my career that I had an education in finance. My degree is in fine arts with a minor in art history. And I actually was studying art preservation, so chemistry as well. So the building in the center is Ontario Hall. You see it pictured all the time. Not everybody gets to go into Ontario Hall, only the art students. So I lived in this building for 4 years, which was incredible. At the bottom is a giant print piece that I did in Michigan because I was taken on an excursion there where we did gigantic print pieces. And at the top right, you can see our final show where we got our names on the wall. I ended up selling all of my pieces, which was really exciting. But one piece, so going on this kind of economic disparity in the gaps, which is very interesting in trajectory, I want to show you something here. This is what I drove when I was going to Queen's. It was a 2003 Saturn, 3 doors, very beautiful. This isn't actually a picture of my car. I had to Google it and find something similar. Not power windows, you had to crank it down, but it got me from point A to point B, and it got me to my part-time job working in a coffee shop. This is what all my friends drove. I kid you not, an almost brand new Mercedes that, mom and dad either had an extra one or had given to them. Power windows, air conditioning, the whole thing. It was always such a big deal for them to come into my car because you had to fold down the seat, climb over each other. And I was the only one that had a part-time job. So it was a very interesting experience. But through it all, I got some really great adventures out of it. I did 2 summer programs in Italy through my course. I spent 1 summer in Venice learning about art and art history and preservation, which was absolutely incredible. The following summer, I was in Saint-Gemini, which I actually preferred. It's a small town north of Italy, population 5,000, so very much kind of like Picton. And our course was all around preserving this church on the left-hand side. You can see in the center, we've got our hard hats on. And then the picture on the right is from a festival that happens in this teeny tiny little town called the Infiorata. And for that festival, every year, the town decides on a theme and does beautiful artwork in the alleyways and along the walkways. What do you think the material of that art is? Think it's chalk? It's crushed up flowers.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was incredible. So an incredible experience. So that's what I did with my degree. Through all of that, I decided to focus on preservation. I applied for my master's, got into Sotheby's in London, in the UK. But then through it all, the bank balances continued to tally up. I unfortunately did not have the bank of mom and dad or a RESP account to fall back on, so I had to take a little bit of a pause and decided to start working. So what did I do next? And this is where I think about that squiggly line, right? What happens next? I've traveled all over internationally. I've done really well in my programming, but what did I do next? I got a job at Good Life Fitness, of course. I got my training as a personal trainer and started working with clients. And I was actually really good at it. From there, I got a lot of wonderful training through the company on sales. Believe it or not, Good Life is really good at sales. So they were very foundational there. And I moved up to managing a small club in the women's gym above the Loblaws in Kingston. That club was kind of ghettoized as well. The women got cast off machines. There was no squat rack. You just got some leftover weights. It was all cobbled together. 1 year later, I was able to increase sales and the budget to get all new equipment for that women's gym, which was a huge accomplishment for that area. And people were just so grateful. From there, I started working. They actually transferred me downtown to manage a bigger club with bigger goals. And from there, I started making connections. That's point number 2 in terms of external influences. So as a personal trainer, you're kind of like a therapist and somebody that works with somebody physically. You're seeing someone 3 times a week, same time. You're really helping them move through some challenges. My clients were investment bankers, branch managers, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and they were really great. They were able to, as much as I helped them, they helped me. Through that time, I also accomplished some other things just personally that I wanted to do. I ran a couple half marathons. I've done the one in Picton a couple times too. The last time I did the one in Picton, it rained horribly and then the sun came out and it was stinking hot. And I decided that day, why am I doing this? This is not fun. And that was my last half marathon. I also got into bodybuilding the natural way, so without any steroids, and became a member of the Canadian Physique Alliance and competed provincially and won, which was really cool. But through those connections, I decided that I wanted to explore something else and see what else was out there for me. 3 of my clients worked at TD Canada Trust. This is how these things work, right? 2 investment managers and 1 branch manager. They were all really great to deal with. And at the time, TD was doing a recruitment campaign where they were looking for people outside of the bank to work for them. Because the traditional trajectory was you start as a teller, you put in your time, you do all your courses and move up to different investment advisors. But the bank was trying to be a little bit more creative and bring talent in from other areas that have received training from other companies, such as Good Life Fitness with sales training. And whether you like it or not, people that work in a bank do have to do sales, right? So from there, I got enrolled in my securities course, all the courses that I needed to become a financial advisor, did really well there, met with the divisional vice president who liked me and what I had to say, and I got a job as a financial advisor, which was 3 levels up higher than usually where you start. So I can tell you that I met with a lot of adversity with people that had worked their way through the system, and I can understand that. I'll just say, like, within this room, some of the seasoned women were the worst to me. They were very confrontational. They tried to take business away. It was a really interesting experience, but through it all, kept going, ended up being a manager from there, moved to a different branch, and just continued to get different experiences, became a branch compliance officer. It's as exciting as it sounds, which is where you review internal documents, make sure that trades are being processed in the correct manner, make sure that the branch is safe. I was in charge of all cash ordering in and out, so not just Canadian, but US and foreign securities. So I learned a lot through all of that experience. And the point of this, and the reason why I tell this story, it's not just the squiggly line, it's the fact that the people that I interacted with took a vested interest in me. And I think that we all have either had that experience or we have the ability to give that experience. And I just wanted to share how powerful that was. So to now, this is my little family, minus the little bump that's growing right now. Moved to Prince Edward County. I was unable to transfer through to TD. The Picton crew had been pretty steady and there wasn't any openings. And I just didn't feel like commuting from downtown Kingston to Picton every day. Could you imagine? Ugh. So I got a job with Pella CFTC, which is the Prince Edward, Lennox and Addington Community Futures Development Corporation. It is a mouthful, but basically it's a nonprofit. And that was my first experience in nonprofit work. And that nonprofit supports businesses and social enterprises within Prince Edward, Lennox and Addington. So that would be businesses that are looking to start up, anybody that needs help, expansion. So with my lending experience, it was a pretty easy shoe-in, but it really got me engaged with the community. And that's when I started looking at alternatives for women and doing tax work for community care for seniors. So that got my foot in the door in terms of nonprofits and the local community. And that's what led me to charitable work, believe it or not. It was just building on that step onto the next one. So all this to say, that's my squiggly line. It's not one step onto the next. And I think what really made the difference is certain people at certain points in my life taking an interest, taking the time, and allowing me to succeed, spread my wings and fly. I think that there's a lot of people that could benefit from that. And I think everybody in this room could have the same sort of impact, and maybe you already have. So I'd like you to continue doing that. And really thank you for letting me share my squiggly story.